What's going on to you, Aquarius out there? So you have the Page of Wands, the Knight of Cups, and you, Aquarius, have the Chariot, right? So these three cards right here for you are about there's definitely a brand new meeting of the minds. The Page of Wands, feeling like you're young again. The page cards usually represent someone who is youthful, right? So there's definitely a sense of you, Aquarius, being youthful when it comes to just life. You know, there's an overall reinvention that you Aquarius have had about yourselves, where there's a sense of you've managed to do so much of the responsible thing for such a long time, to the point where a lot of you Aquarius are realizing that, you know, it's time for you to actually have some fun. And the best way that you are doing that is to seek that internal joy and to end up being like a teenager, like thinking about what you were like when you were younger and you were happier, right? When you didn't have as much responsibilities. You know, the world kind of puts a serious amount of responsibilities, or more so other like teenagers and adults put way more responsibilities on teenagers in the wrong way. Like they blame teenagers for all their life problems. You know, they you know, stuff like that. And the kind of way that teenagers, the experiences that teenagers go through is a real crazy experience. It's a very unusual experience that teenagers go through. You know what I mean? Like grown-ups, like you can see the hypocrisy about how a lot of grown-ups want other, like they want teenagers supposedly to grow up, but at the same time their supposed grown-ups are very hypocritical because they're not very grown in certain ways too. They hold grudges. And it's like these are all signs of immaturity as well, right? Because you're taking stuff personally, and they'll tell you to not take things so personally. But the point that I'm trying to make here with that is that a lot of you are learning how to be like a teenager, but the correct way, where it's you have personal responsibilities, right? With this Page of Wands, you have personal responsibilities and all of that, but it's not a sense of like it's not a sense of like having to go to school every day, watching teenagers kind of, you know, do the whole peer pressure thing to get into relationships and all of that. Grown-ups bashing you and stuff like this because of the fact that you're young and you're making mistakes and you're trying to figure out, generally you're good, but at the same time it's like, of course no one is an angel, right? We're still going to do things that are kind of bad or whatever, or considered bad or against the norm or against the path that you should take and all this stuff, you know, deviate from that a little bit. And the thing is that a lot of it does your heart good. It does your heart good because the Knight of Cups and the Chariot right here in the playing card suit, the cups would be the heart. So that's my point, right? It would be the King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, you know, the heart suits. So this is my point, right? Like the fact that, remember how I just said that it does the heart good? It is, because a lot of you Aquarius are doing things that you wanted to. Because a few readings ago, I was suggesting about how you Aquarius got to get yourselves to a point where you stop really burdening yourselves with a lot of things that really don't have to do with you, right? That's another thing too. We talk about love over here on this channel, but you know, we don't talk about self-love enough because the topic doesn't come up. But we don't talk about self-love enough, where it's like, you know, we really do have to learn to stop taking things on and putting it on our shoulders that really genuinely doesn't have anything to do with us. It's not running away from accountability and responsibility. It's about understanding where accountability and responsibility is, and that if it doesn't have anything to do with us, if it's not on our shoulders, right, then for us to be cautious about burdening ourselves with things that truly don't matter at the end of the day. So why that's important in the first place is because of the chariot, like I was talking about. Understanding, a lot more of you Aquarius are understanding why it is that you even do that in the first place. And that's what Aquarius is about. One of the things, Aquarius is about understanding where the burden is versus where it's not, where the problem is versus where it's not. And because you understand where the problem is and where it's not, you understand what you need to do and what you need to essentially stay away from, because you're not supposed to be burdening yourself with everything. This is what the Egyptian mythology is about, when they say that, you know, when you make the transition into the spirit, into being spirit, right? Anubis basically comes through and weighs your heart, right? In the mythology, up against the feather on the Libra scales. And that if your heart weighs more than the feather, then you're gonna get your soul, basically you're gonna have to reincarnate and come back here and like do it all over again. Not the same things that you've done, but you're gonna have to essentially live again physically and reincarnate, and then basically get more life lessons because you haven't learned. The reason why it's saying all that, right, is because you have to learn. What it's saying is you have to unburden yourself with the earthly things. This is why in a lot of my videos, I talk about not a lot, but enough. But this is why in some of my videos, I'll say things like, I don't hold on to anything onto anyone too tightly. It's because I've gone through that lesson before, right? Where I realized from my own personal experiences, trying to keep relationships, trying my hardest to hold on to relationships, the relationships not turning out as well as I would like them to, the people resenting me, even though they were the ones in the wrong. I wanted them to be around because I had love for them, but they ended up resenting me even more, you know, going harder to rebel, to not be in a relationship with me anymore, you know, cheating, sort of this, you know, heartbreak. How many, you know, the nonsense, the ideology that hurting good men is glorious. That narrative, right? That narrative. I realized from personal experience, heartbreak, exhaustion, and all of that, and just the things that I need to do, that I needed to reprioritize what I needed to. And because I was able to reprioritize what I needed to in my life, like what was truly important to me, it made me more focused on what was actually important, what is important to me, right? And that enabled me, from understanding that, I empowered myself by being able to actually let go. So now it's like the stuff like, I honestly see the majority of like relationships nowadays really like as burdens, me personally, right? Because and the point that I'm trying to make here with that is, that's how it is that a lot of you Aquarius don't necessarily see relationships like burdens as far as romantic ones. But a lot of you Aquarius are understanding that you cannot hold on. And why that's important is because the Ace of Wands and the Hierophant. These two cards right here, right? The Ace of Wands speaks to having a brand new skill. So it's like the brand new skill is the letting go, is the detachment, and not being so rooted in physical reality and being a little bit more spiritual. Because there is honestly, and I'm gonna start talking about that more if it comes up, there is a spiritual component to, there's always a spiritual component to this, where you realize that you can't hold on to someone or to anything too tightly, otherwise it breaks, otherwise the relationship gets stale, right? And even if the person decides that they want to up and leave, still let them leave, because that has nothing to do with you. Let them leave. Let them go off and do their own thing ultimately. You know, there's people who I thought I was in a wonderful relationship with, that I was getting to know, and they would reach out to talk to me every day, even if I didn't necessarily want to talk to them. This is before I started to know anything about playing games and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like I knew that they were playing a game with me or whatnot. But let's face it, let's call a spade a spade. They did it in an act of cruelty. They did it in an act of having to hurt me, because I'm thinking that I'm going good with them, and then the next thing I know, it's like, they just basically one day they're like, oh, I found somebody else. All right, bye. And I haven't heard from them since. And that was years ago. That was way more than 10 years ago. That was like 10, 15 plus years ago. So it's like, again, and why that's so important in the first place is because this is what the Hierophant represents. The Hierophant represents a spiritual element. There's a wisdom that comes with experience, right? There's a wisdom that comes with experience. If you Aquarius have been learning your lesson, which you have, you realize that you're happier this way. There's a lot more there's a lot more inner peace without having to overly burden yourself. Now, why that's important is because you transmutate, or you become the Fool. You Aquarius become the Fool, and the Fool is the most powerful tarot card in the deck. The Fool represents a person who is open-minded. They have the mind of a supercomputer, right? Because of the fact that they're open-minded. Adults, that going back to the Page of Wands, going back to being a teenager again, where you were a lot more lighthearted, right? The Fool, right? And it's the card up underneath the Page of Wands too. But the Fool, right, is about how you have the mind of a supercomputer, because the Fool is a person that does not get to a certain age and then they think that they have stopped learning in life. And like I said, that's the one thing that adults do. This is why it's being an adult. This is why most adults are quite hypocritical in nature, because they get to a certain age and they decide, well, they know everything. Their ego gets inflated. And it's like, no matter how old you are, life is school in on itself. That's why when you get out of high school, I ain't gonna get too deep, but the elementary school, right? And then you go to high school, because at that point you're old enough to start making decisions for yourself at the age of 17 or 18, right? Most of us 17, 18, within that range, because now you understand life a little bit more. But the school was just housing to make sure that you have something to do with your young years. Now, after that, if you want to go to college, it's you. But life has become your school. Life was always your school. It's just that now it's more pronounced that life is your school now. Even though I've been to college and I dropped out and everything like that, life has never stopped being my school. I still read. I still educate myself. I still take time out of my day to very much so learn things, right? And the Fool, that's part of what makes the Fool the most powerful, right? And this is where a lot of you Aquarius, where you are, a lot of you realize that no matter what it is, life, love, family, what it is, you're good, and that you need to hold on to that spiritual place in the heart, that soulful inner peace, that joy that a lot of you Aquarius have achieved, and to not let that go. The Knight of Pentacles and the Nine of Swords right here is about how because there's a lot of that it exists, and that there's a lot of stability. There's a lot of stability. The Nine of Swords is about, because how many times do you remember not having that mental and emotional stability, right? The King of Pentacles and the Nine of Cups, and people will play on that. People will literally play on that. The King of Pentacles and the Nine of Cups, this is one point in time that a lot of you Aquarius have felt very peaceful and very stable in months, maybe even years. So you Aquarius, So you Aquarius definitely understand that something in you and in your life has shifted, which is great. So let's clarify the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups, Hierophant, King of Wands, the Sun card, and then you have the Knight of Wands. To clarify the Nine of Cups, the Nine of Cups. The Hierophant and the King of Wands you're changing, becoming a lot more, you're reinventing yourself. You're becoming a lot more spiritual. Yes, you still have a body, obviously, and you're still alive, and you're living your life, and you're not perfect. But there's definitely has been a transformation of like trying to get money and everything like that, and needing to see things in a concrete world. Because like a lot of the times, Aquarius is kind of like a contradiction. Like a lot of the times you Aquarius are a contradiction, where it's like y'all are air signs, which air is not necessarily the most tangible element, but at the same time, right? Air is not the most tangible element, but at the same time, it's actually the least tangible element. But at the same time, y'all be concentrated on money, right? Like it's odd. Like it's such a contradiction, right? Anyway, but a lot of you Aquarius realize that you have to take yourself out of the more physical aspect of things, and learn to become 50-50 physical and spiritual. This is why, as I say, the sun and the Knight of Wands is about how and there's a whole spotlight on that. And there's a whole spotlight on like other people can see that you've become a lot more spiritual, and that they can try and like make it, some idiots are still gonna try to disrespect you and everything like that, but it ain't gonna work. Like for instance, before, when I was a teenager, I would be very upset at somebody that I had respect for and that I liked going at me and wilding out. Now it's like I brush it off. It's true, I brush it off my shoulder. Every now and again I may get a little bit or very bothered or whatnot, to be fair, but generally speaking, I'm just like, look, I really don't need the stress. Peace.